During the Iraq War, he was the only single journalist to go on the air and say this, it was in the build-up saying we should not go to war, right? This is why it's wrong. He was the highest rated host on MSNBC and his show was canceled and he was fired. He was the only one who was saying it. And so there is a groupthink mentality in journalism where even if you know something is true, it's never going to get approved to be on the air because your bosses are going to say, well, no, that's not right. They can't tell you why it's not right.
Welcome back, guys. We are at the Anarchapulco conference in Acapulco, Mexico, and I got Ben Swann right next to me. Ben Swann, you've been a mainstream reporter for many years.
That's right.
And at your talk, you said you were set free by Dash. Can you tell us the story behind,
Sure.
what did you do in the mainstream and why you were set free by Dash?
Sure. Let me get you the quick version here. 20 years that I've been in broadcast media, working for NBC stations, Fox stations, CBS stations. I spent years as a news photographer and then a reporter, a morning anchor, a primetime anchor. Went from El Paso, where I grew up in Texas, to Cincinnati, and I was the prime anchor for the Fox station there. And when I was there, I started a segment called Reality Check, which was a huge internet sensation, blew up online. We had millions of people around the world watching it, and it was the segment that was being done out of Cincinnati, the Fox station in Cincinnati. By the way, had great success with that. We were the last place station when I got there. We became the #1 station in the market in the 2.5 years that we did it. And then I left that in order to go start an independent project called the Truth in Media Project. And I did that for a few years, from 2013 to 2015, and built that up independently. And then in 2015, the CBS station in Atlanta contacted me and offered me a job to be their prime anchor. And as part of that agreement, they agreed for me to keep Truth in Media going and to keep doing all the work I was doing. So I took that job. I went to Atlanta, moved my family there. But after being there for a year and a half, they started to dislike the stories I was doing and dislike the controversy around them. It didn't fit the mainstream narrative. And so they shut down all of my sites, my website, they shut down all my social media. And it was all down for a year. In November of last year, for a year while I'm doing nothing, right, except anchoring the local news in Atlanta.
One question, sorry for interrupting. Sure. So was there one certain, video, because you were shut down? Was there one reason, or was it just in general you were like doing too controversial videos? I
think what it was is there were kind of a series of videos that started getting the attention of other media. So we had 110 million video views of our videos in 2016. So many people were watching. But when I started really hitting on the war in Syria and the propaganda that was being pushed in the United States over that war, a lot of media started to attack me. Not attack me on the facts, not saying, hey, I can prove that what you're saying is untrue. It was just saying, well, no, you don't know what you're talking about because Assad's bad, and so the U.S. has to take him out. And so it was never fact-based criticism. And then I did a story on the Pizzagate story, which a lot of people have seen. And there were a lot of people who were unhappy about that story. Not the public. The public overwhelmingly, I mean, it had 1 million views in 24 hours. And people saying, hey, I'm glad you're talking about this. By the way, Pizzagate is not a theory that I came up with. It's something I created. It was just a story I reported on because it was in the news.
And of course, you just came up with facts. You said, okay, this and this is strange about, and you didn't come up with answers. You just raise questions.
Right. I never assumed to create any kind of narrative around it. Just exposed it. And then the station didn't like it, and that was why they shut everything down. They did not like it. And then in November of last year, I was approached by some folks who knew about Dash and its DAO treasury, right? It's decentralized autonomous organization treasury, and said, they have this treasury. You ought to make a proposal to bring back Truth in Media and bring back Reality Check. And so I put together a proposal in December, submitted it at the very end, and it was a big proposal. A lot of people told me it would not pass, and it did pass by a large number. So 2 weeks ago, we relaunched truthinmedia.com. We relaunched Reality Check with Ben Swann, now powered by Dash, and we're doing those videos. And already, I think in the last week, we've had 3 million video views in the last week. So it's been really great.
So what do you think about Dash as a coin?
Well, I think Dash as a cryptocurrency is fantastic, right? One of the things that I think makes Dash superior. No offense to all the folks here at Anarchapulco. It's a little bit competitive here, right? But I do think it makes it superior is, number one, how anonymous the transactions are, which was one of the promises of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin hasn't really lived up to that. And then also, when we talk about the transaction fees, that take place are much lower. I think look, the promise of Bitcoin was that at some point we were going to have this cryptocurrency that was applicable to everyday life. And Bitcoin's never really become that. I have a lot of love for Bitcoin. I have had Bitcoin in the past and traded with Bitcoin and funded projects with Bitcoin. But I think what Dash brings to the table that's unique is the ability to become what was promised out of Bitcoin, which is a everyday useful currency that people can use for everything, paying their water bill, paying their rent, buying groceries. That's what I think it has the power to become.
Okay. Did you talk about cryptocurrencies or the monetary system in mainstream media, or do you now start talking about cryptocurrencies?
No. So I've actually done a number of reports about cryptocurrencies. I spoke at the Texas Bitcoin Conference in 2013. Okay, so I have talked about it. I've been highly critical of the financial system on mainstream networks, the Federal Reserve. I remember when I was in Cincinnati, one of the stories I did was explaining to people the gold standard and the fiat currency that is the US dollar and how it's not backed by anything, right? Except it's really a petrodollar now, right? The only thing that really backs it is the connection to Saudi Arabia and to petroleum. And I remember doing this story, and I had all these people who were contacting me afterwards saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you talked about this on television, on a Fox station," right? And I remember we tried to create a promo out of it. If you guys know what a promo is, it's basically like a little commercial that says, "Hey, if you weren't watching Reality Check, you missed this." We made a promo explaining this story, and my bosses at the time were like, "No, nobody's going to get that. Like they're not interested in that." And I'm like, I'm trying to tell them people are interested. They care about this stuff. But
okay, you said in your talk, like you got many messages from colleagues or former colleagues. They say, okay, it's really great. You can talk about everything you want. Like you're free. Do you think journalists, they censor themselves and they write something else than they really think?
I think that when it comes to journalism, there's a groupthink mentality, right? So you get a group of people together and you say, we all kind of agree, without ever saying this, we all kind of agree that these things are true. So, in the United States, all journalists kind of agree that war is good. Right? You don't have journalists who are saying we shouldn't be intervening in other countries. What we'll talk about is the U.S. needs to spread democracy, right? That's the way they say it. And they all agree with this narrative. If you are a journalist in the United States who says, actually, blowing up other countries does not spread democracy, you're not allowed to say that. Phil Donahue, if you know who Phil Donahue is, he was a famous talk show host in the United States. He worked for a cable network called MSNBC. And during the Iraq War, he was the only single journalist to go on the air and say in the build-up saying we should not go to war, right? This is why it's wrong. He was the highest rated host on MSNBC and his show was canceled and he was fired. He was the only one who was saying it. And so there is a groupthink mentality in journalism where even if you know something is true, it's never going to get approved to be on the air because your bosses are going to say, well, no, that's not right. They can't tell you why it's not right. They can't show you facts as to why it's not right. They just agree that it's not right.
Okay. So do you think that many journalists, they are pretty unhappy in their jobs because they are like slaves, literally slaves, and they have to talk stuff they don't really believe in?
No, I to be honest with you, I don't think they're unhappy for that reason. I think they're unhappy for other reasons, like they have terrible pay and terrible hours, and the job is not as glamorous as they thought it was going to be. But I don't think that they're unhappy because they can't talk about what they want to talk about. I think, I'm going to be honest here, I think most journalists have never considered that there are other ideas. Okay. Because most journalists, and I'm not trying to be critical of all journalists, but many journalists who are out there do not go to school because they are intellectually curious people. They go to school to become broadcasters or newsreaders. So what they really go to school for is to be on TV. And so when you take those people and then say to them, okay, so you graduated and now you're working, and this is not true of all of them, but for some journalists, they graduate and now they're working, and then you say to them, let's talk about economic policy. Let's talk about Austrian economics. Let's talk about fiat currency. They're not interested in that stuff. They'd much rather talk about what are the Kardashians doing, right? What is that entertainment? It's what we call infotainment. That's what they're more interested in.
But of course, that's always what the people ask for. The people, they want to get entertained. Most of the people, they don't care about the monetary system. Of course, I think many people they feel this discomfort, they feel that something is wrong, but it's easier to numb yourself with the Kardashians or something like that.
So what I would argue is, I don't think that's entirely true. I think that so if you've heard the analogy of what came first, the chicken or the egg? Mm-hmm. Well, the chicken came first because it laid the egg. Oh yeah, but then how was the chicken born? So the egg came first because, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think it's true of what you're talking about. I think we say people don't care about this stuff because it's boring and they just want fun stuff. But when you create content that's interesting and to the point, people do consume it. The problem is that if I said to you right now, prove to me I'm wrong by showing me the intelligent TV shows that are on the air that people are not watching, you couldn't show them to me, right? Because no one's making them. And no one's making them because the guys who run the network say, well, no one cares about that. And it's all groupthink, right? And I think that there's an opportunity to be able to shift away from that.
How do you see censoring? Do you think it's getting worse? Especially for me, my opinion is after Pizzagate, they came up with this fake news stuff. And in Germany, people even censor themselves. Like for example, even I do it on my own. Like I don't talk about the refugees crisis. At first, many people talk about it, and then. Of course, it's the scissor in my head, how to say, it's controversial and many people, they don't want to feel this discomfort, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think here's what happens, with the refugee issue, is in the beginning, people talk about it until they figure out what the sides are. What does this side think and what does this side think? And then you can't talk about it anymore. Because when everybody gets put into their camps on their sides, it's kind of a bad word to use with refugees, but everybody gets put into their sides, right? Now, as a journalist, you can't have an honest conversation because if you say anything that's perceived as negative, then you're on this side. And if you say anything that's perceived as positive, now you're on this side. It's a tactic that media actually uses to divide people instead of saying, well, let's talk about serious issues in a responsible, thoughtful way. And it's their way of really controlling the way people view it.
Okay. So, but do you think it's getting worse with the censorship from the government side?
No, I don't think it's getting worse in terms of censorship. I think what's getting worse is it's a term we use here in America, or not here in America, but in America, called the dog whistle. You guys use that term there? Which a dog whistle, you blow a dog whistle and only the dog can hear it, right? And so there's a lot of smearing that goes on with organizations that are merely designed just to attack media or attack ideas they don't like. And then they label you with things, right? And it's a dog whistle. By the labels they put on you, they're trying to tell everybody, oh, this person is this thing or they're this thing.
So it's a soft dictatorship.
Exactly. The censoring is much more in a silencing than a censoring.
Much more subtle, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what I found interesting, you lived in the north of Mexico and you covered the drug war.
Yes.
What's your stance on the drug war?
Well, so in terms of what to do with it?
Many people say, oh yeah, a government intervened and it went wrong. Do you think like what we have right now that, many people, so what's your stance in general?
I think first of all, I'm all for legalization, not decriminalization. I'm for legalization of whatever substance you want to put into your body, even if it hurts you. I think as a libertarian, I believe that individuals have the right to choose for themselves. Freedom means that I can choose poorly, right? It means that I can choose something that's unhealthy. That's freedom. And it's a personal responsibility. Now, what I shouldn't be doing is taking that freedom upon myself and then asking you to fix my problem once I've created it. But I think that the drug war is a joke. I think, having been in Mexico and covered the drug war, the only way you're going to fix the problems in Mexico in terms of drug gangs and drug cartels is to legalize it in the United States because it's a supply and demand issue. And just in terms of numbers, consider this. 70% of what the Mexican drug cartels send to the United States in terms of product is marijuana. 70% of their bottom line comes from marijuana. So if you legalized marijuana in the United States and allowed all cultivation in the United States, you cut their bottom line by 70%. That has a huge impact. It doesn't fix all the problems, but it would be a good start.
Yeah, there are some states right now who legalize marijuana, right?
Yes, there are some states in the United States that have legalized it, but it's varying degrees. So in Georgia, where I live, cannabis oil and THC oil is legal, but you can't grow it there. So in order to get it, you have to travel out of state, which breaks federal law in order to go get it. In a state like Vermont, they have just passed a law that allows you to grow it there, but you can't use it. So, and then Colorado, you can do both. So every state is kind of different, and that's kind of making it a mess.
Okay, great. So, do you have like friend journalists who told you, okay, are you crazy to go down to Acapulco? Acapulco is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Like, I think like 30 people a month get killed here.
Yeah. So not journalists, but my wife.
Your wife
said, don't go. All right. She said,
she didn't come.
She did not come. But she also knows, look, as I told you, this is Acapulco, and this is nothing compared to what Juarez was like when I was there. When I was covering Juarez, it was literally the deadliest city in the world at the time. This was 2007, 2008, 2009. The most violent city in the world. There were, I think over the course of a year, 40,000 people who were killed there in very violent ways. We would drive across the border every morning to cover stories there, and you would see decapitated bodies hanging from overpasses. I mean, it was very serious. So, yeah, there is definitely drug violence here, but it's nothing compared to what we were doing down there.
Okay. Ben, thank you very much for the interview.
That might have been too graphic.
So, thank you very much.
Appreciate you.